The American Revolution, the French Revolution. They were completely different revolutions. One had a real purpose, and the purpose of the American Revolution wasn't to destroy society. It was to embrace the principles that these colonists believed in and to throw off a wretched monarchy. Then you had the French Revolution, the purpose of which was to fundamentally transform their society, destroy it, top to bottom. You have 10 years of terrorism in the French Revolution. Explain the difference.
Well, the philosophical difference was one was based in liberty and the other was based in a form of statist, collectivist, secular, utopian ideal. The false promise of utopia is something that the left has been using for thousands of years. And the French Revolution was no different. When they took power in France, they literally abolished time. They wanted to restart the calendar and get rid of the agrarian-based calendar because they said all history before us is irrelevant. We're going to start history now.
What does that sound?
It sounds quite similar to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying everyone before us has gotten everything wrong before us.
It sounds like Marx.
It sounds like Karl Marx. It's the exact same sort of hubris and lack of respect for the thinkers and the sacrifice of people preceding you. The Founding Fathers were appreciating the sacrifice of the religious liberty Judeo-Christian values of the colonies. You have to understand that the people that came to America and founded the colonies originally, they left seeking liberty and freedom and put their entire life on the line. They could have died on the voyage over, they could have died of disease. There is no guarantee it would have worked out for them. And then they started to live under oppressive rule from King George and from the monarchy, and they rebelled into the formation of the greatest, most prosperous, generous, benevolent civilization ever created in the history of the world. France, to your point, was a rebellion not inspired by the American Revolution. That is a lazy interpretation of history. It was inspired by greed. And that's what drives the collectivists and the socialists. They were upset that the French ruling class was living so well. So instead of having an American-based revolution in France, where they wanted to restore natural rights and restore private property, they decided to begin what ended up being a decades-long slaughter of infighting, collectivist control. They tried what was called the Paris Commune for a very short period of time. It's ended up being a total and complete disaster. I think it's rather instructive because the left will always operate in predictable patterns. We can learn also from the Russian Revolution, which was different than the French Revolution. But this revolution right now, this revolution that they're trying to do in America, is a little bit of a mixture of both. The reason it's different, though, is that never before have we seen a Marxist revolution be so outwardly against the country they're trying to take over. The Russian Revolution, they actually disguised themselves as pro-Russian. They're actually trying to take over the country while convincing the populace it's a horrible and evil country.
And yet, Bernie Sanders says, don't call me a communist. Don't call me a Marxist, even though he embraces them. I'm a democratic socialist because he understands propaganda. He understands nomenclature. The left always does. There's nothing democratic about Bernie Sanders. One election away from centralized, overbearing government. He wants to double, triple the size of the federal government. I want the American people to realize what that looks like.
We're not a democracy either.
And we're not a democracy. We're a republic. So there are things in the... Give you an example. The Bill of Rights. Your neighbors don't get the vote on whether you have free speech rights, or whether you have freedom of association, or freedom of religion, or property rights. We don't put that up to a plebiscite. It's not up for a plebiscite. Those are God-given rights.
Yes.
The framers of the Constitution said.
Natural from our Creator. And as the left